Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Jim Holmes. Jim is one half of Bo Weaver, a production, mixing, and songwriting duo based in the UK. They've worked with an array of talented artists, including Reese Lewis, Wolf People, the Archie Bronson Outfit, 7778, and many, many more. Alongside their production work, Bo Weaver have made several albums as artists and continue to write both for Sync and Library. Jim and I connected recently online, and I invited him to join me on the air, which he's graciously agreed to do. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Jim.
Hello. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me, Ben.
It's a pleasure. We've been schmoozing for a while now before we even started the actual podcast, but we have a few things in common. We've both worked with Alex Clare.
Yep.
And we were both at the March 2018 Flight of the Conchords show in Portsmouth, England.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So
it was a fantastic show, a fantastic thing. And Alex is a fantastic guy. So,
yes.
You know, we're connecting and we're agreeing straight out the bat, which is the way to go, right?
That is the way to do it. Yeah, absolutely. And so you were telling me you're on the Isle of Wight, which is pretty far out. I'd love to hear a bit about your story.
Okay.
We'll go back before the Isle of Wight. We'll talk about a little bit, how music began for you, and how that led you into audio engineering, and specifically on the Isle of Wight as a part of a production duo.
Okay.
I bet there's a whole story there.
Well, there is, and it takes quite a standard form, I suppose, in that my brother and I. So I work with my brother. Bo Weaver's two. It's me and Rob. He's the more let's say talented one. I'm the louder one, hence I speak. I'm here. He's not even in the building. But as teenagers, obviously being brothers, we were together often, and we formed a band, and we were doing well. So this was around the grunge era, let's say. So we were doing Soundgarden covers and, Pearl Jam covers. In fact, I'm itching my arm right now. That's where I've got a Pearl Jam tattoo I got when I was like 15 or something. So
wow.
There's something, yeah. So we did that for a long time, and only on the Isle of Wight, and that was great. And then I went off and did some degrees and some things in art. But my brother kept going, doing music, and set up a very small little studio at home, which was kind of, a Mackie desk and a Fostex and all this sort of stuff, which was great. And he kind of got some of his local bands in and all of this. And then I happened to be living down in a place called Brighton in the UK. And he went to a night out to watch a friend, and he got up on stage when the friend wouldn't sing, and he did a few songs, and this guy came up to him and said, well, you're quite good. You should do some songs. So, oh, okay, well, I'll speak to my brother. We put together 2 or 3 songs, demos, just, via post as it was. And hilariously, that same guy took that demo, sent it to Universal, to Nick Gatfield of Universal, who was running Universal Island at the time, who got a bit excited about the band, decided he wanted the band, and made the band an offer. This is all within a month. So it was completely and utterly insane. So I was working as a graphic designer in Brighton. Rob was running this little studio, when all of a sudden we had this kind of 3-album deal with Island on the table.
What?
Which is just, I think back to it now about how ridiculous it seemed. It was completely ridiculous.
You hit the jackpot.
Yeah. And we weren't even any good. This is the truth of it. So I came back to the island, which is what everyone calls the Isle of Wight. Came back to the island, and we had to form a band because it was just me and him that had done this, this band. So we got some friends together, and then Nick Gatfield, he came to the island because he wouldn't sign off on the deal until he saw us. So we put a gig on in our local pub. He travelled down from London, saw it, signed it off, and then within, I think, 6 weeks we were signed. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then we did that thing of having to write an album. And it's fair to say that Island signed us on a couple of songs. This happens a lot. So Island, at the time, they would sign 4 or 5 bands and hope that one would kick off, and that would fund the other 3 or 4.
Right.
That's how
That's how VC works, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it worked for them. The week that we signed these bands probably won't mean a lot to you, but we signed with the Fratellis, a band called Nine Blackouts, a band called The Feeling, and Keane. So was it Keane? Oh, I can't remember now. But it was a lump of bands.
I know Keane. Yeah.
So it's a lump of bands. So that was into the Universal, not just Island. So we did that, and we signed, and we had 2 or 3 songs that were quite bouncy, you know, a little indie kind of bangers, if you like, very English. And the label wanted 10 of them, 12 of them. But we decided that we were very, very adult rock stars. And so we made a really difficult kind of almost prog rock record under the name Jackson Analog. And it's a good record, but it's a difficult record for a debut record. And I remember some of the first reviews coming back, and it was coined as dad rock. Everyone called it dad rock, and we knew at that point we were screwed. We hadn't even released a single. We knew we were already screwed because it's dad rock. But we didn't play ball with the label, and we had a very difficult relationship with them. And eventually we parted ways after about 18 months or something. At which point, we'd done okay for money. Rob and I, being the principal songwriters, we got a bit more than the other lads. And so the other lads spent their money on, you know, trainers and cars and 60s P basses and things like this. And we just put it all back into the studio to record what, you know, the end of our first record and the beginning of our second. So we bought a brand new Audient desk before. So at the time, Audient were a new thing. I'm sure you know Audient. They do a lot of sort of big scale desks. At the time, they were brand new and they were being touted as the next sort of big thing. We're like, oh, okay. And we got completely sucked into it and bought like this 48 channel, sort of 96 channel capability. You know, it was absolutely huge. We paid a lot of money for it. We could have bought, you know, a 53 series or something with the money. And I remember telling people at the time and other audio engineers going, you could have bought a Neve for that, mate. I'm like, yeah, but you don't know. We've bought, you know, the next best thing. So we did that and we set this studio up and bought bits of gear and then did a second record that no one cared about because why would they? It's dad rock, you know, at least. And we put that out and we just found ourselves in this really nice studio not doing anything. We weren't doing anything with it. So we kind of looked at each other and said, well, let's just start inviting some people in. Let's see what happens if we produce a band. We've only ever produced ourselves. Let's see what happens if we sort of tell people what to do. Can we do a good job? And it turned out that we kind of could. So we started having bands in and word got around a little bit. And we did some kind of, you know, some local stuff and a few decent bands. But it wasn't really working. It wasn't really getting people to the island was difficult and we weren't really having that breakthrough anything. As you know, as everyone knows, it's hard. You can be as talented as you like, but you just need that one thing, that one spark that puts your head, you know, above everyone else. So we looked at each other like, well, what do we do? You know, and our manager at the time, he said, well, look, we never signed a publishing deal when we were doing the band. We, for some reason, we just held off on it. I don't know why. And so he said, well, look, how about I go and get you a publishing deal and that will give you some money for a bit. And then you kind of really, you know, double down on the production. We're like, okay, well, you know, try. And again, our luck being the way it is, we signed a good publishing deal. And we just decided, this was around 2000 and I'm going to say 9 or 10. Around then. And we said, right, okay, we've got this money in the bank. We're going to pay ourselves this much a month, pay our rent, and we're just going to work for free for this whole year. We'll start January 1st. We'll finish December 30th and see if we can't make... it was... Thinking back now, we were young. That's the only explanation I've got. But we thought, let's just go at it. So we got our manager to go and visit every label in London. He was quite well connected anyway. But we just had people come down to the island and we did act after act after act, 5 days a week, every week, you know, with maybe a week off for a year. That's what we did. And because the labels were getting a great deal because it was free, we were getting a bit of a reputation for doing certain things, and that was great. And we worked for free all the way through till I think it was about this early December. And in early December, we got asked to do some spec mix on a Tom Jones track. And that was the first paid job we took in the December, and then we started paid jobs properly from the January after.
Wow!
So it was a bit of a ballsy move, but it worked. It really did work. The truth is that back then, you could get a lot of money for remixes. I know that sounds crazy now, but back around that time, you would get 1,500 quid, $2,000 for a remix. You could do it.
Shit.
Yeah, you could do it for mad bands, you know, like can't think who we did. Animal Kingdom and the Doves and all of these bands, they put out their single, and at the time it was content long before there was sort of video content and Instagram and things like that. So they just needed versions, and we got a bit of a rep for doing this this style of remix where we wouldn't listen to the track. So it's like, send us the files, but we're not going to listen to the track beforehand. And then when we got it, we almost instantly took away as much tinsel as we could. The tambourine, the Juno on the chorus, the third layer of guitars. We'd strip it right back to next to nothing. And then we'd hear the song like that with just the vocal, and we would remake it however we thought was right. And that was normally in a sort of fuzzy kind of, almost like a psychedelic kind of way. But it got the attention of lots of people. So we were doing, for all of the rest of that year, we were just doing a lot of remixes doing this. So we would take like a song, really twist it, make it something completely different. Almost like, if you ever come across like the Nuggets series, which is all that sort of 60s psychedelic garage bands and things like that. It's almost like we were making the originals that these bands had copied. It was always fuzzy and that.
It was like a throwback. They were throwback remixes, not modern remixes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is all mono drums, and the thing we used to get the most is like, I love what you've done with the brass. No fucking brass. There's no brass on it, but everyone used to confuse fuzz, really dirty, de-eyed fuzz, as brass back then. And so we just used to nod and go, okay, yeah, the brass is great, I guess. So we did that for a while. And we did so many. I was going through them the other day. We must have done, I don't know, 50 remixes. And here's the I can't work out if it's brilliant or not, but here's the truth of this. All of those remixes we did, it seemed that everyone loved the idea of a Bo Weaver remix. That would be great. That would be really good. Let's do it. Oh, yeah. But very few people ever put them out. They never put them out. So we gathered together all this money. It was like, oh, this is great, but no one's ever heard of it. No one, I can't. There's one band that put out, and I can't. What was the band that did Sweet Disposition? The Temper Trap. There's a band called the Temper Trap, and they had a big hit over here with. It was like an O2 advert or something like that. And they were the only people that I can think of that actually put out one of our remixes, which I just think is amazing. We just did all this work. They're just sort of someone in an A&R office went, yeah, I like it, but we're not putting it out. It's how funny is that? So after we did that for a while, yeah.
But you know what? You got label work and experience.
And we got our name in there, most importantly. Yeah. People knew who we were. Oh, those weird brothers on the Isle of Wight. Cool. Well, let's see what happens if we send a human to them. They can do a remix, but what if we take this, this delicate human we've just signed and send them down to the island? Let's see what happens. And that was our next stage, really. We ended up doing a lot of work for the majors up here, which is never what we intended to do. We're not industry-facing people, really, and the music that we like and have worked on subsequently is not necessarily mainstream. But for a period of time, a good 2 or 3 years, we did, and it was always a new act that had been signed, and they would they're not sure what this act is, or they want to pull out the one good thing about this act and sort of run with it. So we would have all these really early career acts down, which was really nice, because I'm sure you've come across this yourself, that someone that's just been signed and is 17 to 25 or something, they have this energy, they have this kind of indestructible, undefeatable energy where they think that everything they do is fantastic and everything's going to go right. The music industry hasn't shit on them yet. It hasn't sort of knocked them over. They still think that it's going to be okay, Yeah. That is it's addictive. It's like a great musical drug to have someone through your door each week that is pumped about music and loves music. Like, oh, what's that? I love the color of that guitar. What drums are we going to do? It was a really nice thing. And that just kept us going and drove us for a good couple of years, I would say. And that was actually in that time, I'm probably getting it a bit mixed up, is when we met Alex Clare. So I believe he was not signed. He wasn't signed at the time, but our manager knew his manager or something. And he was flirting with some labels, and he came down and did some bits and pieces. And then we did some sort of dark, because as you know, Alex has got one of the best voices I've heard in the room.
He's amazing.
Oh, I still now
Yeah.
think about the first time we had him in our studio, and I remember sticking like an SM7 up or something, and just going, okay, we'll just try this. The volume of that man is unreal. He's so loud. He's so loud, that vocal. But I remember, and he was he was a bit folky at the time, but he had this dark thing that he wanted to pull out, and we kind of messed around with that. And then really quickly he was signed, because again, I think we did a track called Whispering with him, I seem to think, because I'm quite sure that he kindly gave us a credit of the middle eight or something. I know that when my check comes through each year, there's always a bit of whispering money on it, sort of thing. And I'm pretty sure it's only an A minor to an E or something, something like that. But he was a real stand-up guy. And then he went on to do his actual stuff with Diplo and Switch, with Major Lazer, right? I think
so,
or something like that. But so that was the point I'm making, is that was the kind of level of act we were having down. These people that were just breaking through.
On the verge. On the verge.
Yeah. And I guess that as producers, our style is not to be too forceful of our ideas. And also we're kind of... we had lots of experiences in studios, different producers when we were in the band. And we learned a lot from it. Some things we liked and some things we really didn't like. And we didn't like that whole kind of a producer that was going to try and anger everyone in the room to get an angrier take or all that sort of stuff. That didn't fly with us. We didn't like it. And then towards the end of doing our first album, we worked with a producer called Head, whose real name is Howard Bullivon. Don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but that's his name. Too late now.
We can edit it out. It's fine.
Yeah. He's called Head, right? So, and Head did a lot of stuff for PJ Harvey and Marianne Faithfull and all this sort of stuff. And he took us on, and he kind of helped us do the some vocals and things. But this man was just such an inspiration to us. He was so calm, so measured in everything. And no matter what was going on, because we were quite a fiery group of lads, to be honest, and there's a brothers right in the middle of that. You can imagine how that goes. But he would just be in complete control of everything without ever raising his voice, without ever being frustrated, without ever showing any kind of discomfort with what was happening. And we loved it. And so we've tried moving forward to take on board some of these, what we call headisms. The way that Head would act in situation is how we've sort of gone forward. And it's just done us so well. We've said to him since that, we've based our entire production career off the months we spent with him, because he's just a wonderful, wonderful human, And I think that led us to working with these acts, and also being the right kind of producer for these fresh faces. I'm not sure that if someone that is a bit nervous because they've just signed a record deal and all of a sudden there's pressure and there's people asking them about when's this song going to be done and all these things that you don't think about before you sign. And then to go into a studio with some kind of really tough producer.
Yeah, intimidating.
Then
you lose that kind of energy and that fearlessness and
absolutely. You don't want to kind of, what we say over here, piss on their bonfire. You don't want to. You want that energy to still be there, because again, everyone knows if you can capture that energy to tape, that's it. That's the money. That's gold. Whatever those people do in your live room, during your pre-prod or whatever, if you can get that down to tape with them still being excited and it's not the 75th take, that's the gold. And I think that people do that when they're comfortable, And so I guess really that's why we did so many acts like that. And it just worked for a really long time. And I guess over the next 2 or 3 years, we just worked with more acts and more acts until we decided, okay, well, this is going well. We like this, but we should find what we do, I think, because the major label stuff wasn't necessarily us, putting down what we would consider quite a great folk track, actually, and then having to have 2 days production afterwards, adding 808s under the kick and samples. It's like, oh no, this isn't us. We don't know what we're doing with this. And so it would always falter at that point for us when we didn't sort of record the truth of how we saw the songs. So we decided to start working with acts that we understood and acts that we loved and enjoyed and we genuinely thought we could deliver on. And that became our rule around 2015 or something, is that we won't take on a job unless we think we can nail it.
Yeah.
And that's meant we've turned down some jobs that could have been really good financially for us. But I know that 2 weeks in, or 2 days in, or 2 hours in, Rob and I look at each other. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm lost. It's not for us. This. I think it's a really important thing for a producer or a songwriter or anyone in the music industry to understand, or to come to terms with, is what they're good at. It's so important.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because so many people, especially when you're flailing around for money and you feel like you have to take every job, it's actually counterintuitive, because you won't enjoy it, you won't do something good, and you're not going to get any more work out of it, because the end product's not going to be great. So we really have doubled down on this idea. And so we mostly do now. It worked, is the truth. And we mostly now do, I would say, kind of left of center pop acts. So pop acts for something interesting, indie kind of guitar music, some heavier music, but it's always in the fuzzier side of things, a bit retro, a bit psychedelic. And then really sweet, beautiful, tender acoustic stuff. And that's where we've kind of ended up. It sounds like that's quite across the board, but the mentality...
That's like music I love, so I get it.
Yeah, well, there you go. And but the aesthetic of it, I use the word aesthetic wrong, but I'm not going to start again now. But the aesthetic is always that there's humans in it. And that sounds stupid. But the more we've done this, the more we found that the more human you can put in a song, the more it sings and it comes alive. And do you know what? Let's add more humans. Like, so you come into me as a singer-songwriter. We do an act called Swan Levitt. Beautiful voice. Wrote everything on his own on a little gut string. Wonderful. We could have done an album just like that. But I was like, well, what would happen if we brought in some more humans into the room? So we brought an incredible drummer called Rupert Brown, and a double bass player, and all of these piano players. And we just put humans into it. Just kept throwing humans and human minds. And we didn't even press record for days at a time. It'd just be like, okay, let's just find this vibe in the room of you lot. The beauty being that when we did mic everything up, and not that we recorded it live, but some sections were. And when we did press play and record on something, it was 1 take, 2 takes, because everyone knew what they were doing. It felt really real. It felt really engaging and natural. And it didn't have that kind of forced production that you can have on like a singer-songwriter. My worst, I can't bear it when you hear a singer-songwriter and it starts, and you're like, all right, well, that opening vocals through a telephone effect. I'm guessing we're going to sort of bring in an acoustic in a minute. And I bet you there'll be, oh yeah, there's the Juno in the chorus. That sort of stuff. I'm fighting to get away from that. Not that I'm trying to be alternative and I'm too cool for that. Not at all. But it's just that if you can get loads of really talented musicians in a room and let them kind of run for a bit, they nearly always come back with something fantastic. Nearly always. So
you've already like hammered on like 2 of like my biggest things in this podcast of like my takeaways or whatever is like, first of all, like doubling down on what you do best and on what you love. And everybody has to find that for themselves. And like I just talked to somebody named Shachar Busini who's working with Bob Horn in LA, and he's like, man, I tried so hard to mix like Bob Horn, but it wasn't working because I have to mix like me. You know what I mean?
That's exactly right.
And and the other thing that you just mentioned, and now my brain is kind of farting, but give me a second.
Humans.
Yeah, humans. Exactly.
Yeah, humans.
And then just humans, and just that human touch of getting more people in the room. More heads are better than just you. You can't do everything by yourself, and people that think, we think we could do everything ourselves because we get stuck. Maybe not you because you're part of a duo, but most of us kind of slave away in our man/woman caves and don't see the light of day. And then we just think it's just us. But like really, when you bring in more people, when you bring in, somebody to help you with the mix or the master or to play an instrument, like the song always gets better because humans react to one another and have different ideas. And the sum of all of that is better than what it was
so
before.
True. You're spot on. And it's almost, when you do something completely on your own, I fail You put me in a room on my own and say, oh, create something. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. I overthink everything. I analyze everything. And I end up with something that is it just sounds like Pro Tools, if that makes any sense. It sounds like everything is gridded right up and it's all in box and just horrible. But I've discovered that when I have people in the room, or lots of people in the room, it's not that they're trying to one up each other. It's not like they're, oh, well, Rupert's just done something incredible on the snare, I'm going to do a lovely little bass run. It's not that. But there is this general sense of the level of the song. So if the song seems to be ticking along really well and everyone's into it, like, wow, this is great, you do see players play up to it. They up their level, and you don't have to say a single thing, and it's not discussed. The bass player doesn't say to the drummer, right, I'm going to really try a bit harder actually because you're nailing it. It just happens naturally. The song just evolves and it comes up better nearly every time. I think it's just such a wonderful way of having. It's almost like an unspoken accountability, if that's a fair way to say it. It's everyone. No one wants to let down the team, but it's done in such a way that it's not me versus you. We're all playing for the greater good. So here's a weird side thing on this. I look after an under-10s football team. Completely insane. I hate football, but my daughter does it. So I am the manager now somehow. Completely ridiculous. 4 hours out of every weekend wasted on a stupid sport. But the one thing that we try and get across to these kids at 9 and 10 is that it doesn't matter how good little Johnny is. Little Johnny's not going to win this game on his own. It doesn't matter if he can do all these fantastic moves. It doesn't matter. He's not going to beat another 7 players. It's similar in there. Sorry, I'm pointing to the live room. It's similar that you can't have someone, doing some fantastic piano piece and think that that's enough for the song. It has to be everyone coming in. And there's nothing, I don't love anything more than having some pre-prod with that happening. And then you just throw up some mics, around the studio. Nothing good. Just throw up some mics. You just press play and record so you can hear back where you are. The band finished, they look at each other and they're like, oh yeah, that was all right. Let's have a listen. And they walk back through my door. It's already a song. That's one of my favorite things. They've not walked for 10 seconds into the control room. I press play and they can hear that the song is there because they've spent the time forming it together. And all of those points that I made earlier, it all comes together. And I love that. Then you get the song down as its core, and then you worry about the twinkle over the top and the saxophone solo and all of this stuff that doesn't really matter,
Right.
Get the core of the song.
Get the foundation.
Yeah.
Musicians in a room, they're able to intuit things like, even if like when they don't use headphones, you could figure out dynamics and how loud you should be playing better than if you're, in cans. Like we have these, psychoacoustic, abilities that we often let go of in the studio. And it's important to, I guess, remember that, let humans do human things. And not just...
And if I was just being romantic and I'm talking all of this, but I've actually only made it work once or twice, I would be a fool. But over the last 10 years, I can say with my hand on my heart that the best 10 records I've made in the last 10 years have all been done that way. And there's just something about it. I can't really explain it. And I've tried to pick it apart a million times. And I've tried the same musicians back and da 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 da. But we did a record with a guy called Pete Molinari, who's an English guy. He's over in America now. I can't think what the record's called, Theosophy or something like that. And for that, we gathered together just some players, some proper players. So a guy called Rupert Brown on the drums, and a guy called Trucks played the bass, and a man called Tommy Gardner played the guitar, and Pete. So four people in the room. And I think Dan Auerbach did some stuff, some overdubby stuff later on, but the mainstay was done on the island. And they did that whole album in 4.5 days pretty much. And then Pete came back for one more day to do the vocal. And it was effortless. It was so close to being how I always imagined recording music would be. Because we all think that, you see it in films and you think this is going to be wonderful and sort of rock and roll. Yeah, you just that was the magic. Great, let's move on. But with the right players in the right room and the right attitude, you can actually do that. And that's so exciting to me. And so I mean we're always trying to do that, no matter what. We did a band last week, a local band that wanted to do sort of some 10-track album, 12-track album. They tracked it all, barring vocals, not even 2 days. And it's just kind of like, well, yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. We'll do some piano overdubs and he'll do his vocals, but it's just done. There's something that's such a turn on for me. The idea that you can just be done. Oh, it's wonderful. It really is.
Yeah, it also probably speaks to the artists being open to kind of bringing in those other those other players, and just rolling with the punches. I feel like some artists are like yes and like it's like what's it called with improv? To make good improv, you have to say yes and a lot
Right, yeah.
and some artists are such perfectionists and sticklers to certain things, and they won't say yes and those records, like, I feel like don't get finished the same way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well, I
could be a big red flag.
Sorry.
But, yeah.
No, I agree. But I do have a completely opposing counterpoint to it, in that I've seen it done. So we've made a couple of records, and I think we'll talk about it later, but Rhys Lewis and another guy called Jalen Ngonda, who are incredibly talented musicians and artists and people generally, And we did a track with Jalen. I can't think of the title off the top of my head, but it's a wonderful, authentic soul kind of ballad. Now, the same guy I mentioned earlier, Rupert Brown, did the drums, but everything else on that you hear is Jalen. He did the lot. And we just spent 2 days with him facilitating his vision, his performance and all of that. And what came out at the end felt completely cohesive and like, a band of 20 years that everyone knew each other, had made it together. So it can work the other way, but you really, really, really need to be on your game. You need to know. And there are certain things that are quite cool about it, in that, let's say someone does a strange little push that it's not in the music, it's not in the tab, but they push in certain parts. If he's doing the guitar, the second guitar and the bass, and the keys, he or she will do that push naturally on everything, and you have this wonderful glue that comes from one single mind,
Right. Yeah.
And Rhys Lewis is the same. He is spectacular in the studio. So after drums, he would do pretty much everything, and we made an album that didn't come out in the end, but we did an amount of songs that were an album in that way. With him, he takes on board comments and everything, but at the end of the day, he knows what he wants and he performs it and does it. So there's two examples of the complete opposite that work.
Right. But as long as the artist has a vision and is willing to kind of follow through with it and not, yeah, totally. I wanted to ask you a little bit about working with your brother. What it's like to, first of all, to work with your brother and to be in a duo. What does that look like? Because most people are at it by themselves. It must be. I'm sure it has its challenges, but it must be great.
It is great. We went through, obviously as brothers, we've known each other for all our lives, but we also had the baptism of fire, as in that we did the band together. So that signed band that I mentioned, we were in that together. So we went through all the ups and downs and the pressures of that together, which kind of brings anyone together, I think. Quite a lot of bands that had a career that didn't necessarily kick right off, that it gives you this strange bond, and you kind of, we meet up with our old band even now, and it's like we went to war or something. It's crazy how we're so close even now.
Yeah.
So we had that starting off, and my official answer would be that it's taken time to work as a duo. You have to learn your limits and what the other person is just simply better at than you. So with Rob and I, we've established everything. There's not one thing that is left to chance now. So if we are doing the pre-prod, it will be Rob in the control room, just getting, scratch sounds. I'll be the one in there moving parts of the song around. I'm more comfortable doing that. He's more comfortable in the control room. And then when it comes to, say, recording, he will always, always, always record the drums. He just has the ear for it, and he's excellent at it. I always do the vocals. I normally do the guitars, he'll do the bass. So we just have these sort of roles that after so many years of doing it, they're not even discussed anymore. We just kind of take it on. And because being two people, seems like it will fracture you. But if you have enough shared musical knowledge that we do, Rob and I, we have the same references, so we can talk in almost code to each other, and we do. We can go, oh, like da 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 da, say some obscure kind of Bollywood reference, and we know what we mean, you know. So it's very rare for me to walk in the room or him to walk in the room, and one of us has done something that we're like, mate, what have you done? No. We're generally on the same page. So we're lucky in that respect.
You've put in the reps together, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We've done our 10,000 hours together, sat,
Plus,
next to each
probably.
other. Yeah, and some, but always together. And so all of our failures and all of our successes have been joint. So we're kind of completely stitched together like that. Does the being a brothers thing make a difference? I think it does. There's definitely points where if we weren't brothers, we would have had breaks. For sure, and it would have blown up more. But then that said, you can't argue with anyone as well as you can argue with your brother or your sister, right? If that's the way, we can have, and we do it. We can have a band of 7 people in the studio, and Rob and I can have a full-on row, and no one knows that it's ever happened because we do it all in code, or with little looks, or I'll move that thing that he hates being moved, or he'll take my favorite channel out, and there's all this stuff, and it's wonderful. But you have to enjoy it, you know. I think that.
Yeah,
it's been mentioned to us, and it's very true that we speak to each other, Rob and I, like we've been through couples counselling. So we will be like, Rob, I understand why you've put spring reverb on the undersnare. I'd just like to hear it on the overheads. Everything is sort of done like this, and as funny as it seems to other people, it gets us through the day, because you've got to remember. Everyone does. Every producer, every engineer does it, in that they have a persona that whether it's a big persona or it's just a small one, they have their studio mask that they put on. So we have those as well. But when everyone leaves, it's still me and him looking at each other. And that's when we have the sort of quite honest conversations about things. Oh, that didn't go well today. It's like, well, I think that maybe if we'd have done this, with our tip is that we never say, oh, if you'd only done that. We talk collectively always. So it's like, if there's been if Rob has made it's probably me. If I've made a really big mistake, it would be brought up as, we could have done this better, not you really did it. And that's quite a good little move, actually. That's my top tip for working in a duo.
Nice. I like that.
But also, I think just remembering that 2 heads is quite often better than 1. You've always got someone that can give you an opposing view. Yeah. And you don't end up going down those rabbit holes. It's very unlikely that Rob or I will sit for 5 hours finding the right kick sample, because, you know, we'll just slap round the back of the head by the other one, you know, or like if we go off on some crazy tangent, we're reeled in. It's nice. We're really comfortable with it, but we don't know. My Riot is a 2 that do it over here in the UK, but I can't think of many other brotherly duos like that. Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have it on the web. We should make more of it. It should be our thing.
Yeah, brotherly duos. It's really badass. Yeah. It's and also, you know, because obviously you love this person and you respect them, and so it's just easy to kind of, you know, even when
I like him.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Fair enough.
No, I'm joking. No, you're right. Yeah. Sorry, I jumped in there. I was being good.
No, but that gives that extra like cushion of like whatever, you know, arguments or whatever. You still know that no matter what happens, like you're still going to have their back, even if, you know, with friends, right. You don't necessarily know how hard you can push.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. And I think that we, at the stage we're at, we're so educated in the other person. We're experts, you know. There's a TV show over here called Mastermind. Do you have anything similar, where someone sits on a chair and they're asked questions about what they know the most about? And it could be anything, you know, like Family Guy front covers from season 1 to season 4. Completely mad stuff. But if I had to go onto Mastermind, I'd probably do it on Rob, I imagine.
Yeah.
And I would nail it as well.
Yeah.
I'd be winning that competition.
Nice. I thought you were going to mention Taskmaster, which I have seen, but
oh yeah, no, I've seen that.
That's
bit.
fun.
Yeah,
British TV. Yeah, totally. Tell us a little bit about your studio on the Isle of Wight. What is it? What's the setup there? What does it look like for, you know, people coming to work with you?
Okay, so we've actually in the last year moved. So I'll do a 2-part answer, I guess. That for the last 16 odd years, we were in a really odd building. So over here we had a queen called Queen Victoria a while back, and she had her big kind of country mansion on the Isle of Wight in a place called East Cowes. It's called Osborne House, and our studio was in a water tower on the outskirts of Osborne House. So it's this Victorian water tower, which, so to describe that, that's a 3-story Victorian red brick building with I think it's like a 45-ton water tank in the roof. And we had the top floor and the bottom floor. So we had live room downstairs and then the control room upstairs. And that was wonderful. And we loved it. And we did a lot of our best work there, I'd say. But a year ago, or just over now, maybe closer to 16 months or something, we moved and we've built a new studio. So our new studio is a 1-level facility that is, as you can probably guess, quite retro. There's a designer called Mark Neal who did I think Dan Auerbach's studio, and he also did a studio in London called Toe Rag Studios, which is Liam Watson's studio, which is done in a kind of very authentic 50s 60s way with a holy board everywhere, and it's incredible. And we've done a lot of, well, not a lot, but a few sessions up there at Toe Rag, and there was just something about the whole vibe of it that I loved. I loved that it wasn't too comfortable. There's no chairs in Liam's control room, for example. There's no chairs. So like if you want to listen to the music, you're gonna have to sort of lean on a studder. And I kind of like that. So we've taken inspiration from Liam and Mark Neal's designs for sure, and just sort of brought it a little bit further forward. We've gone for, it's been really interesting to build a studio again. So, having a place for that long, 16, 17 years, and then having a whole new space and going, okay, well, what do we want? This is mad. What do we actually want? So we decided that we didn't want a huge control room. I don't know I can't work out how big our control room is, but it's not huge. And we didn't want a massive live room. So we capped our live room at 7 meters square, which is about right for us. And it's like about 3 meter ceilings or something. But we just wanted it big enough to record lots of people at once because of what we've talked about already, and to have some sort of natural ambience to it. I'd been to enough SSL dead studios with too much pine everywhere and a sofa at the back. We just didn't want that. We wanted the opposite of that. So this the live room is lively, damn it. You can get a kind of really big snare when the levy breaks type drum sound if you wanted, or you just bring it all closer and it's like that. We in a world where anyone can record anywhere now, right? And they can do a good job of it. They really can. Look at Phineas and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The only way we figured we could survive as a studio is to become a facility, yes, but also a destination. So when people come here, they feel like they've arrived somewhere and they're getting something that they can't get from a laptop, and Logic at home. So it's stylized to a stupid degree, the studio, but we thought that it was worth the time and the effort, because when you walk through the doors, it does hit you and you do feel like you're somewhere not important, but you're somewhere that you've not been before. It feels like an event to come here, and that's what we wanted. Well, that's what we hope it feels like, Sure. So that's because it's we've got to get people here. We're on an island at the end of the day. Right. Why would you come down to our studio instead of going 10 minutes up the road to Chelsea or somewhere in London? So that reason for many years was because they wanted to work with me and Rob, and that's great. But we fell off the face of the earth during lockdown, the same as everybody else, and we're coming back out the other side. And now we're trying to sort of bring people down again, and we've just got to get them over here. They've got to pay that the money to travel, and they've got to pay the extra money for the boat, and then to have a hotel instead of staying at their friend's house. So it's got to feel like they're getting something out of it, and so we've gone for that, that experience, I suppose. And it sounds great. Because none of that would matter for shit, would it, if it didn't sound very good? We took it over, and this is a sidebar, but when we took the studio over, a friend of ours had been building a studio here, but had just about finished before he moved on to a bigger and better job, working in some lovely studios in London. But he had put some wooden planks on the ceiling. So it's kind of like a faux ceiling joists, if that makes any sense, like big long beams, like mock Tudor is the style. I'm not sure if that's so everything was mock Tudor, but it had sort of problems, the room, with the live room. We were getting really stressed about it, so we took everything out and we took these beams down and we had the room blank, ready to redesign it. Okay, let's redesign this room, let's get this right. And then we thought, well, before we do, let's just try some sounds, see what we do. Hit a snare, hit a drum kit, recorded a few things. We're like, this is how I want the room. So what do you mean? So this is it. This is the fall off of the verb, the reflections, everything. This is how I want the room. So what we ended up doing is having a room that we considered perfect and having to build round perfect, rather than getting a room and then tuning it with and making it perfect. We had perfect and we had to protect it. So that was a crazy building process. Absolutely crazy.
So what did you do? How did you do that?
By balancing anything that went in. So if we were perfect, right, how we had it, and we wanted to control a little bit of the high ends, but there was no flutter, there was nothing at all. So every time we put a board this side of the room, we would put one matching the other side, and for everything. So it's like a kind of Stanley Kubrick scene in there. Everything is perfectly balanced, and then over time we've sort of put equipment in there, and it's changed it a bit. But we basically just had to, every time something went in, a new wall, a new type of ceiling, when the tiles went on the ceiling and all that, we had to just test again and make sure we weren't losing what we loved in the first place. But I don't recommend that as being a way to build a studio. It was completely ridiculous, But
yeah, but it worked.
It works. And, as far as running a studio on a remote island goes, the short answer is it's difficult. It's really difficult. I'm not going to give it any pomp and say, we're swimming in jobs, because we're not. It's hard. We have to fight for pretty much every job we get, and we have to have good relationships with labels, and we have to phone them. It's like Field of Dreams. Just because we've built it doesn't mean they're going to come. So we have to be really, really, really on the ball with that. Like, our marketing, if you like, is us making contacts and maintaining relationships with A&R men and managers, and saying, right, okay, what's that new act you've got? If a manager I know posts anything on Instagram about their new band, it won't be 5 minutes before I message him about the band. I'm not proud, and it won't be in a pushy way. It's like, whoever, what's going on with that band? Anything I can do to help? Love to get them down if we like them. Love to get them down there, and Rob and I will chase a band until we get it. We managed to do it. There's a band called the Archie Bronson Outfit, who we consider one of the greatest bands on earth. Love them. I've never been more excited by a band in the last 20 years, and we saw them at a festival, and then went to hundreds of their gigs. Well, not hundreds, maybe 10 of their gigs. And then over the next two...
just a slight exaggeration.
A slight exaggeration. I was just thinking they've probably not even done 100 gigs. But over the next couple of years, we built up a relationship with them just over, Instagram or something like that. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Talking to the point where when they did an album, was like, well, why don't you just send us a track? We'll mix it for free. We'll see, that 2008 mentality coming back to us, where we say, well, see what we do. And so we got the parts and we nailed a mix. And oh, look, now we're mixing their album. So now we've mixed their album. We know them personally. Oh, look, they're down to record. And those kind of relationships, those we try and keep hold of these good relationships as long as we can, till the band wants a fresh pair of ears, or they, are no longer a band. We have to spend a lot of time making these connections to get people in the studio.
Yeah.
The way it is right now, for everyone, it's so tough. So we've just recently ramped up everything, and that's how we're getting people through the door, is making the calls, not being too proud just to phone someone and go, hello, just checking in to see if you've got anything for me, and doing a reduced rate for a band that we've done 5 times before, or a label that have blown a load of their budget on their new act that hasn't gone well, and they've got this other act. So, all right, well, look, we'll knock this off the price. Just send them down for a couple of days. It's all good. We always say that money from John down the road, who's recording a song for his wife, pays the gas bill the same as Island Records. Money is money. It really does. As long as, big brackets, big asterisks, we like the music. Yeah, that's it.
No.
That,
You're proud. You're not too proud to reach out, but you are proud of what you're trying to do, which
You
is
sure?
yeah. And what was I going to say on that point? I had a thought about it. Just give me a second here.
This is my fault. I talk over
Oh
everything.
no,
I'm
it's
such
okay.
a bastard.
You're cool. I was just going to say that Instagram, like as terrible as social media has become, and maybe like the algorithm is completely just tanked, and on Instagram, it's still a great place to connect with people, and like I don't know if I would call it a community, but there's no better place for like people in our industry to just find each other. Like we met each other on Instagram, right? Like Instagram for all the shit is a great place to just cold DM people. It's just perfect for that, and like
It's
it's
true.
crazy how you could just really meet people over it.
And what I found is that most, and I'm going to say most, loudly, most people that I've met that do this job are pretty sound. There's not a lot of ego going around because everyone knows you can't have ego in this game. You really can't. I mean, all right, there might be a certain handful that can, masters and blah 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 blah. But most people know how hard it is, and they know we're all fighting the same battle. So everyone I've reached out to generally has spoken, has sent me back a message, and we've had a dialogue about it, and it's nice. The playing field, regardless of how well they're doing and how many streams and awards and that, it feels like we're all fighting the same battle, and that's actually really nice because the other thing that talks about being on an island again is that we can feel quite isolated sometimes. You're doing your thing and we're not going to all the producers are meeting at the tile yard, let's go up there and talk about. We don't do any of that. That's not us. So to be able to have these conversations with people, we were talking to Sam, his name escapes me a minute, but had a brief conversation with Sam Fender's producer recently, just over Instagram, and he's killing it. Brit Awards and this, that, and the other, and Ivan Novellas and all this sort of stuff. He was so nice, and we just had a chat, and he liked the studio. He's like, look, next time I've got something I think will work, I'll look to come down. It's like, great. It was really nice, and that's the, if I'm honest, normally the kind of interactions we have. So that's cool, man. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I find the same thing, and I'm shocked at how approachable most people in the industry are. And I've had conversations with people I never dreamed I'd have a conversation with, and for the most part, everyone is so chill and so easy to get along with, and it was big. For so long, I was in my man cave, and then I finally went to an AES in New York, and I was like, oh, they're just people like me, and I was like so intimidated by them, and that kind of like opened the gates for me of like, oh, you could kind of chat with these people, and you're not alone, and it's good even just to talk shop or just to whatever.
Well, it's funny. The big eye opener for me on that is just to name drop briefly. I mentioned Pete Molinari. We did a Pete Molinari record. That ended up being mixed by Chad Blake. Mixed that.
Oh shit.
And
that's fun.
There was So it's mad. It's mad to hear something you've recorded go and come back from Chad Blake. It's an event. It's very interesting. But towards the end of the project, there was some post-production stuff done. Andrew Weatherall, who died last year, did some kind of added some mad elements to things, some stars and all this. And there was something happened with the files. I can't remember what. And Chad couldn't get the files. Or it wasn't working. Some download thing wasn't working. And in sort of desperation, him or his manager reached out to me. And I was like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, but let's see if we can work it out together. And me and Chad ended up having this hour-long period where we were both sort of sat on the phone with the laptop trying to make it work. But it ended up being excellent because we were waiting for things to download. So we just had this sort of hour-long chat about nothing, about just two people in a pub just having a pint. Yeah. And I didn't have time to worry about it because it was just happening. It's like, oh, Chad, your phone in a minute. I'm like, oh, okay. And it's like, hello, Mr. Blake, or whatever. And we just had this really normal chat about photography and where he lived and just all this stuff. And I remember putting down the phone and just thinking, like you, it's just people. These are just people. And it was really, really nice, actually. It was, I bore people with that story often, but it was a cool hour in my life. I really, really liked it.
Yeah.
And the mixes were obviously incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Did you have any takeaways from his mixing your record? Was there like something that you learned about mixing based on how he mixed something that you maybe would have mixed differently?
Well, not so much that I would mix. Yeah, maybe. So this album was it's almost like Americana, like bluesy Americana maybe. He's got a very high vibrato voice. And Chad slammed it. The whole thing was slammed in Chad style, big drums and da 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 da. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful record, interesting record, but I heard it tamer. That's my only takeaway. But we did do a few other things with Chad for the same artist. And the one thing I will say is the speed that man can work is mind-blowing. I remember we did a Beatles cover, I think, for Q magazine. It was Pete Molinari again. And Chad was going to mix it. And I finished it and I sent the files over. And this was, let's say, 2:00. I remember driving home, so that's half an hour. So say 3:00. I did something with my kids, I think, maybe had a bath, and I was not out of the bath and the mix came over. So it wasn't 2.5 hours, and it was killer. And I remember thinking, oh, he's rushed that. He's pumped that one out. And then I put it on and I'm like, no, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So that was a wonderful takeaway. But it's the thing, it was actually a bit of a privilege, without being all gushy, to have spent time on an album that was done really quickly and then hear his take on it. He maybe pushed it more than I would have done, but it sounded great. It really did. It was kind of humbling.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're close to the greatness in that sense,
Oh, I haven't spoken to him ever again. but still, I've never spoken to him again since. But maybe if I passed him in the street, I'd pluck
I think
isn't
he out in England somewhere?
He's in Wales.
He's in Wales, in the UK.
I have a really tenuous link. My brother-in-law lives just down the road from him, but I've never gone to see him yet. I will. I'll pluck up the courage. Next time someone needs some hard drive issues sorting, I'll work it out.
Amazing. Tell me about mixing. Do you and your brother mix together, or does one of you mix? What is that? How does that look?
We have so certain things. Right. So what we do is we kind of look after projects as managers. One of us will do it. So let's say, for example, that Swan Levit I mentioned, for some reason and for no real reason, I kind of look after that project and I manage the studio time for that, and some other things that we have in Rob will manage. So that person will normally take the lead on the mixing. So with Swan Levit, because I've been there through it and I might do a lot of it. And then Rob might come in and say, oh, well, what about this? And then we will always, nothing ever leaves the studio without the other person hearing it, for sure. And again, it's that whole thing of knowing your limitations. Rob is infinitely better at mixing, rock music or heavier guitars than me, 100%. He has this kind of NS10 ear that can do that all day long, whereas I struggle and I tend to make things more of a mush if I do that. But if we have something important everything's important, but let's say it's a rush job and it's a major and it's industry facing and this, that, and the other, we will take it in turns to look at the mix, but we will always be in the room together. And if I notice that Rob's going down a rabbit hole, I'll pull him out of it and vice versa. But it's because there's no, we don't have to pad anything we say. It's wonderfully quick. I can be doing something and they'll just be no from the back of the room. And that's all we need to know to move on from what we're doing, which is really cool.
That's wild.
Yeah, and we have slightly different ways of working. Rob is very talented inbox. We use a lot of outboard into Pro Tools,
right, sure.
But then I have the tendency to bust a lot of things out within a mix. But Rob would do next to none. He mixes much more in box. So there's an interesting kind of hybrid going on there. If we're both mixing on something, I will kind of do a lot. I might send the guitar bus out to the Neves or something like that. So there, I might do all of that stuff, and then Rob will come in and use some, I don't know, soothe on the channel. And so we have this kind of harmony with that, which is a nice thing as well. It's like I can kind of go in and be all brash and hot and transformery, and he can just make it sound not crazy by just doing some clever trick in box that I don't really understand. So
that's cool.
It's really cool.
Can you navigate his Pro Tools sessions? Can he navigate your Pro Tools session? It's easy. It's like oh, you guys put the the kick drum on the first channel. I don't know.
Yeah. We're kind of set with it. He's terrible at naming things, for sure. There'll be lots of unnamed stuff and he does it, whereas I'm a little bit more OCD. But we did go through a phase, I'm going to say just before lockdown, where not a Michael Brower thing, but we started to have more buses than just a mixed bus. I'll tell you what it was, and this is nerdy, so I apologise. I don't normally get too nerdy. We had some EQP1As that we wanted to use on mixes. I went to see a fantastic mastering engineer called Guy Davies, works at Electric, and he did this trick that is all the threes on them. I don't know if you've ever done it. You take, I'm looking at one now, you boost 3K on 3, you boost 3 at 3K with the bandwidth on 3, right? And it just does this presence that leans forward. It's like, what is that? That's unreal. And I had to do it. I had to do it. So we got those, but we found that over a whole mix, they were kind of a bit squashy. They weren't sort of tight. So we ended up having a drum bus, a music bus, a vocal bus into a master bus. And so there'd be all these different, and when we did that got a little bit complicated because I would mess with something and not mark it properly. He would mess with something. So we've gone back now, and we more times than not, we will have master bus, music bus, and a vocal bus. So we're pretty good, but there's nothing worse than Rob leaving for the day and I'm left with an act, and I go into the session and I don't know what's going on and I can't find anything. And
yeah,
Rob's one of those, he will have, 10, 15 mics on the drums. And once he's happy, he will just go to a bus and he just takes them out of the session. So sometimes I have to go and I'm searching around in the sidebar for things and I don't know what, because he's not named anything, so I'm just looking for, is it _1? Oh, I don't know. But generally it's okay. It's nice to have someone who can instantly give you an opinion. So, if I'm like, I've got this real obsession for 70s snares, that really crisp tape snare. I love that. I really love that. Whereas Rob doesn't necessarily. But I've got this thing where I would thin things out too much. And so it's really great just to be able to sort of just turn around to Rob and say, have I done it again? I don't have to say what, because he knows what I'm talking about. He's like, yeah, it's too thin. Right. Okay, I can dial it back. Having that instant kind of feedback is just, it's killer. It's really, really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So whatever time you lose searching for tracks, you make up for it by the quick responses.
yeah. It's kind of
amazing. I wanted to ask you about reverbs. Like I noticed in a lot of your reverbs, a lot of the reverbs in the mixes that I listened to had this really great, like almost like Motown sound to it. Like what's your approach to getting that kind of like vintage soul kind of reverb thing? Is it the room? Like I don't know.
No, it's often not. So the short answer is that for a very long time we had a stereo plate, a 140.
Oh shit!
But a tranny one. We didn't like the valve one. I don't know why, but we preferred the tranny one. We had that for many years, to the point where it was on everything for so long. But as inbox stuff got better, and having a 9-foot reverb that was a pain in the ass, it became less of a joy. We spent some time matching what our plate did using the actually it's the UAD plate, the UAD 140. So we had a real plate in the middle of the room and that plate, and we kind of matched it, and we worked out that the main difference was how the over a stereo field the reverb dissipates. And this is hard to explain without me moving my hands, so you'll be able to see it, but on the podcast it'd be mad. So if with a real plate, the sound starts to fade out instantly from the hit, so it's bash like that. But on most UAD and all that, there's like this a swell, so it'll go back out. It does this thing, and we didn't like that because that's what we weren't used to. So what we've ended up doing is that, I mean, not giving away our secrets at all, we push into the 140 harder than you should. So it really snaps. It really snaps. And then we have an EQ after the plate to take out the less pleasant effects that has. So, for example, if it's really boingy and just ridiculous, we will soothe it, or we will roll off sort of some 3K and all the lows after. So, and that's what we've ended up doing. And I think that actually we have these days we have a saturation plugin on the Verb as well, which just helps to control some of the peaks. So there's that, is what we use ultimately, but we also have a lot of spring Verbs, real outboard springs.
Oh yeah, I think that's probably what I was hearing.
Yeah. But it's a mixture, is the truth.
Yeah.
So
sure.
the boing that you hear will be. We've got those just those Auburn ones. You know, the blue Auburn spring reverbs. They're stereo, but we have two pairs, but we treat them as four mono verbs. So we might have a different length on the undersnare to the the room and all this sort of stuff. But they will all feed into the so over a drum kit, say, which is where you normally hear a lot of that good stuff. We will have individual verbs going on different things, and then that will feed into the plate. So it's two verbs ultimately, yeah. And it's the whole mush. The trick to it is just going way too big on everything, and then just keep turning it back until it's usable. And then, because you did drums mostly first, then we get lazy, then we start saying, oh, I wonder what the tambourine's like through that bus. You stick that on there, so, oh, that's great. And then, oh, actually, should we put a bit of double bass through the same? And it's that. We sneak bits on all over the place. Our outboard is perpetually covered in bits of tape that are different recalls for different mixes and things, because the Inbox can do a lot of things, but I've not heard it do a great spring or great brass yet. Most other things I can be fooled by, but not those two things that, Or actually, and without getting too into spring reverbs, it sounds like I'm sort of endorsed by them.
No, I love this. I want to hear about spring. That's a kind of reverb I don't use enough of, so I want to hear more about it.
Well, the truth is that for a lot of, we did a record under our own name called Bow Weaver. Bow Weaver is like a soundtrack record, and the spring on that drum kit is from a 201 from a Space Echo. That's just that really short tray, really gnarly boing thing that we do, but we would have it only on the undersnare. Well, that's not true. We have a mic that we call the dick mic, so it's the mic that comes over the top that points at your dick. That's it, right? And so that we've used the same mic for 20 years, and it's a PV45. It's a really bad mic, right? But we've had that mic as our dick mic forever, and that just goes over the top of the kick, and it points somewhere between the kick and the snare, and we just feed that straight, really hot signal straight into the Space Echo, and then we almost side chain that up, and that gives you that kind of gnarly, brittle thing that is great on soul drums, and then you have the spring going over the top.
I love it.
So yeah, so that's mainly what we would use, but then quite often we're a sucker for a tape delay as well. So like a Watkins or something. That is weird. I keep looking at the gear. I know it's irrelevant, but they're over here. So yeah, so then we might have a really quick slap on the that Lennon thing or da 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 da.
Yeah.
But we try as much as possible to get all of the interesting character sounds to tape, not to tape, but to Pro Tools,
Yeah.
And then we found that if we spend a little bit longer getting them right outbox, that we our mixes take us third as long. Because we've kind of nailed it on the way in, and that's really exciting. But to be honest with you, the soul thing we found is it's about being completely and utterly bullish about your sounds. It's like, right, okay, I'm doing the piano. This is going to be 100% piano. It's not going to be soft. It's not going to be, reserved in any way. It's just going to be gnarly. So we record everything like really hot, really, really kind of awake, and then we dumb it down in the mix. That's the truth of it, because we found that adding kind of saturation or adding a bit of spice to things later doesn't work as well. We go in too hard and then panic and calm it all down a bit later.
That's interesting. I like that. Yeah. Go, just go for it,
Yeah, exactly. Just go hard. You listen to some of the classic soul stuff and some of the sounds are awful, really bad, but you don't notice because the songs are so great.
Yeah.
It's that classic thing. We're aware of it, and we have to say sometimes to acts that, and I'm sure you've had this before, that some people get attached to the process regardless of the sound. So they're like, whether it's just their favorite pedal chain or they really want to use the Space Echo or the reverb, the chamber or something, but it sounds bad. We always say to them, look, the thing with this is that I know you're enjoying doing it, but you don't get to stand behind everyone that's going to hear this track, tap them on the shoulder and go, actually, that sounds a bit mad, but it's because we put it through the... They don't care. Label bosses don't care. A&M don't care. Get it sounding good. The process, unfortunately, unless it sounds good, it is not good,
Yeah,
it has to come down to that. I've never lost a job with an A&R man or a label because they didn't like the sound of my undersnare. They're like, hang on, I feel like those toms are close mic'd. It doesn't happen. It's we can, as engineers, we can all worry about the weirdest things.
Right.
You spend 2 days worrying about like whether the phase is right on the drums and your chorus is crap. It's like let's worry first about the fact that that sax solo is 16 bars long in the middle of the track. Let's worry about the good stuff, and then it's a bugbear of mine. We have it a lot.
People focus on it's a big problem. We focus on the minutia that nobody cares about. Yeah, and you have to know when to just let go of that stuff.
There's one of my favorite examples is that we've been working on a track for weeks. I won't say what track. It's a really important track for us, and we were on revision. I don't know. 10, 12, something like that. We've done a lot of work on this, and I finally took it home to my harshest critic, which is my wife. I was like, and I play it through, in the kitchen while she's not really paying attention anyway. And I sort of play it, and with my chest all puffed out. And about 2 minutes in, she's like, I don't really like it. It's not very happy. And I'm like, okay. Well, actually, yeah, you're bang on, but I've been worrying about everything else apart from the fact, what this song is given across and da-da-da-da-da. And it was really grounding. So I always try and remember that when I'm too deep in it. What are you getting? What is the target audience? What are they going to feel when they actually hear it? Because like you say, they don't care if you used a tube screamer with an original chip in it. It doesn't mean anything to them. It really doesn't.
No.
You wait till your children are a bit older and get their opinion. It's fascinating.
Oh, that'll be exciting.
It is fascinating. I run everything past my 9-year-old, and she is a difficult bitch with it. I tell you, she should work. She should work for a label because she's so cutting. And I tell you, 3 times out of 10, she's right.
Yeah, being objective is so hard. It's so hard to be objective because we get so deep into it, and There's no good way other than time, I think, to unobjectify yourself from something. Like otherwise, you're just too. You don't have to objectify to become more objective.
Yeah. Well, I really like photography, and I really like street photography in particular, and I'm a bit of a snob about it. But I came across this great. I don't remember which street photographer now. Maybe Bruce Gilden, someone that's doing a lot of street photography. And I found out that what he does is that he will take it, let's say it's January 1st. He will go out and he will shoot 3 rolls. He will put it in a box and he won't develop it till January 1st the next year, right? Here's why. If he woke up on that morning and had a sore ankle, or he was a bit hungover, or he'd had a row with his wife, he's thinking about these photographs in a completely different way. Or he was feeling really excited and he took the shot and he's like, I can't wait to see it back. Giving it that year takes away all of that emotion, everything that is associated with that piece of art outside of the piece of art. And I find that fascinating. The idea that if you strip away, we had a great time making that song. Like, I didn't really like that song because John was in the mood. If you take that away and you hear the art for the art or see the photo for the photograph, I think that's a really powerful thing to do. I mean, you can't leave a song for a year, but just as an idea, just that, like you say, getting that distance from it and getting that, looking at something for only what it is rather than the process that you went through and the feelings you had making it. That's really cool, man. I'm really into that. I like it.
Well, Neil Young, I think, is releasing some like 50-year-old records now that were never released. So,
okay. That's kind of cool.
I guess he got some objectivity there.
Yeah. He can write a song though, old Neil. I'm sure they're good.
But other than your wife and your children, ripping you a new one, you also have your brother to kind of rein you in. And so you guys, it definitely sounds like you have like a team of people to kind of keep you objective about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, as Englishmen, we our natural stance is to be not confident and feel like we've done wrong anyway. The English say sorry before they say hello.
That is true.
It's like, sorry, hello.
I
That's
think
crazy.
some Americans do that also, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah. Well, I mean, anyways, it seems like you do have some confidence.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I'm trying to think where we should go from here.
Okay.
Just give me a couple seconds here.
Sure. I blab on. I can't help it.
No, this is awesome, dude. I'm really enjoying this. I think we should get to the sauce segment.
Sure. Do it. That's Reese, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's just do
Yeah,
it.
cool.
Amazing. Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's time to head over to the sauce segment so people can kind of hear what you've been talking about. You sent me a track called "Waking Up Without You" by Reese Lewis. So let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds, and we'll chat about what went into it. I am losing my English as we go along today, but sound cool?
Cool.
All right, dope. Sorry, I always ask people. Sounds cool.
Oh, okay. So, yes, you do. Sorry.
I don't know why I do that.
No, I like it. I like a little tick.
It's like, let me just redo that. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna reintroduce the sauce segment, and so my editor has an easier time. Amazing. So, Jim, this is awesome. Let's check out the sauce segment. You sent me a song called "Waking Up Without You" by Reese Lewis, who we've already mentioned. Let's talk about. Man, this is even worse than the previous time.
I love one of my favorite. Just so you know, one of my favorite things on the whole planet is corpsing. I love it. It is one of my favorite things. So I will sit here and enjoy this till 10 o'clock if this is what you're going to do. This is fun for me.
Watch Ben make a fool of himself. Yeah, here it comes. Amazing, Jim. So let's head over to the sauce segment so people can kind of hear what you've been working on. You sent me a track called "Waking Up Without You" by Reese Lewis. So let's listen to that for about 90 seconds, and we'll talk about it. Sound cool?
Cool.
Yeah, Jim, it sounds awesome. I love the I love all of it actually. I love the guitar sound. The vocal is like really distorted, and I love the snare when the chorus pops in. That snare sound is amazing. Yeah, it's just a great sound, and it's a great song. So yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
Tell me a bit about what went into that song.
Well, the reason I pulled this song out is for a couple of reasons. I was always really happy with all of the elements of the song, but more importantly, that song brought about a change in our attitude. So I won't go into too much detail, but the actress Lewis, we were brought on really, really early by Decca. So Reese had been going to sort of visit producers and hadn't found who he wanted to work with yet. And the A&R man sent us a call. Gave us a call and said, "Look, we've got this act. We think he could be great. We don't want him to end up being, kind of too lounge or retro or." There's an actor over here called Ollie Murs. It's like a sort of pop soul thing. They were worried he would be like that. And this is Decca. So we were kind of like, okay, well, look, send him down and we'll just do our thing and see what we get. So while he was on his way down, we brought in a drummer, our drummer, who's a guy called Rupert Brown, I've mentioned a few times. And we had this conversation. We're like, look, do you know what? Even though it's Decca, even though it's kind of pop, even though it's mainstream and major label, let's just do our thing on it. Let's forget all of that. Let's not worry for 1 second today in the session what they would think of it. Let's do what we think is cool, send it to them, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't like it, forget it. We did our thing. And it was one of the first times we ever did it. And so Reese came down, and it turns out that he was lovely, phenomenally talented, and really open. So we sort of sat in the studio and spoke for 2 hours before we made any noise at all about how we heard things and this, that, and the other. And we did exactly what I talked about earlier. We went downstairs, played it a few times. I was like, do you know what? This is just the vibe. Let's go for it. Let's just capture what we've got down. So he came down for a day and we recorded it all in that one day, right? So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was one day from start to finish. And we probably didn't start recording anything until, let's say, 1 p.m. We were finished by, let's say, 6. So
wow, that's amazing.
Everything just went right about it. So the guitar sound, without nerding out too much, Reese has a really lovely hollow body Gibson, which I think he used not a 325, a 3135. I can't the almost like a jazz arch top.
The 335 maybe.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, but it was really gnarly. So I was like, look, let's just go for that. So what we actually ended up doing is putting a Fender Twin in the stairwell. And I was like, let's get some air. I like amps to move air. I like to hear the air. So what we did is we had like something really close. And then we had a microphone right down. We had this big stairwell right down the bottom of the stairwell. And I was like, do you know what? That's kind of cool, but we need something to be more itchy, more alive with it. So we put the Watkins tape. Watkins is a tape delay. So we put that in line. And so there's no distortion pedals, nothing on it. And his playing coupled with that, the reverb sound of the hall and the slap just was the sound. I was like, wow, that's great. We've got a vibe. That and that was our linchpin to the song. So once we had that, which was meant to be, I think, the guide guitar, once that was done, it's like, right, okay, well, in which case, let's leave that mic up for the drums. So when we did the drums, we got close mics and blah, 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 but we kept that same mic up in the same place for the drums. And then, so instantly, we had an atmosphere. You could hear a building that this song was in. It's like, okay, rad. So as we went along, anything that we added that we felt needed any kind of air, we just used the same mic. So that became our linchpin to everything. And then Reese went through and played the bass, did the organ, which is a Philips Philly Corder. All of this stuff is hitting the springs and all this. So everything, we gave a real character going in. Absolutely everything. There's like a little finger piano in the second verse and things. And then he did 2 takes of the vocal, which was a Neumann U89, which we actually used on a lot of Reese's voice. It worked really well for him. A U89 that we just slammed. We absolutely slammed. We've got a desk of Pi preamps that are really easy to drive. So we drove that in, and that sound, that distortion you hear is the actual distortion of the transformers and the pre on the way.
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, it's to tape. It's not mucking around. We were kind of like, it wasn't a 2 fingers up to Decca in any way at all, but it was just like, it was an experiment. What would happen? What would happen here if we actually just did a song we thought was cool and sent it back? Wouldn't that be cool if they liked it? So we mixed it that night and we sent it to Decca the next morning. And
wow,
we had a call from the A&R man who loved it. We did something like, I think we took out a keyboard part, sent it, and then that was the mix that went out that became his final single. And it was just like bang, it was just done. It was this moment in time where everything seemed to go right, and off the back of that we got an EP to do. Off the back of the EP we got the album to do, and it all tails back to us just having this conversation over a cup of tea while we were waiting for Reese on the boat, saying, let's just do our thing this time. Let's not worry. Let's not think about what they want us to do. Let's do our thing. And it was a really nice moment. And actually, if I stopped doing it tomorrow, it would be in it would be in my top 5 moments of doing music, because it just, everything worked. He went on the boat, and by the time he came back, he was like an old friend, and we just went on to do the album. I think we did something like 20 odd songs in the end.
Amazing.
All because of, and if we'd have gone safe and tried to make it all, major label and poppy, they probably wouldn't have gone for it. So there was a lesson there. But out of all of the stuff that we've done, I listen to that the most because I know it the most. We've bought some new speakers, I listen to that for sort of 2 hours straight to decide whether I like them. If I'm at a friend's house and I want to hear what their room sounds like, I'll play that track. It's the track it's sort of my thread. It's my anchor to audio because I know it so well.
Dude, plus I love this story so much. I love that you just went all in on your thing, and it sounds like really great, and like you were like talking about the brash sounds, right? Just like recording it like hardcore.
Yeah,
I think I've been talking to a bunch of people about this recently, about like specifically mentioning guys like Vance Powell, who is known for just being brash and just going for it, and just keeping the artist inspired also, because you're working so fast and you're just committing to those sounds, and I feel like when you play it safe, you really get you just don't get the same kind of energy in the room, and you really need to. It's like a lesson for me of just like to be less afraid when I'm tracking, don't always like cover your butt, like you just need to go for it sometimes,
Well, I mean, it's not easy is not the word, but anyone with a microphone and even the smallest of ability can record a guitar, can record a drum kit, can record a band. What we've been trying to do recently, and probably going back to that Waking Up Without You, is trying to find not anything as grandiose as our sound, but trying to put ourselves into other people's music has been the thing that we found the hardest, and it's taken us the longest to do. So find just being able to take an act and say, no, look, trust me, let's go at this. Let's really go at this, and maybe we'll make it and it'll be great, or maybe it'll fall really short and it'll be awful, but at least we went at it and we gave it what we thought it needed. And that has served us pretty well, It's nice. And like you say, if you get the sounds and you're bold with them, it's inspiring. They want to do the next sound. They want to do the next thing. And everything's kept up the whole time. One of my least favorite things here in the studio is like, well, in the mix, turning to a band and seeing someone go, in the mix will make that better. It's like, well, don't do that. Let's make it better now. And then they can see what they're working with. They can see what holes are left sonically and what frequencies they can play with. It saving it for later, fixing it in the mix is just it's lazy. It drives. It's
forget
not for me.
Saving it for later. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There might not be a later.
Yeah. Yeah. Get it now, and also like, I've been talking about this also a lot recently of like, getting the artist to feel confident, and that's if you instill confidence in the artist. They'll just keep coming back to you, and when it sounds great, from the get go, and you're just it's all in on that sound or whatever, and you're not like holding back when you're recording because you're afraid of what you might do later. Like I think it just instills confidence in the artist. So like, yeah, this is a person I want to work with, and this is a good way to go.
It's really important we say this to most acts. It's really important that the artist can trust you. Yes. They can trust you as a producer. We always say that we will listen to them first, maybe their management second, and the label after that. I want them to know that I'm not waiting for him to go to the toilet and phoning the A&R and going, I think he's losing it, maybe we should da-da-da-da. That's not happening. He's going to hear, or she or they are going to hear what we think first from us in the room. And that's how we do our business, if you like. And it's nice because some of those conversations are not easy conversations, but we've had them and we can move past them, and then they can trust you because they know that your word there's a value to it in that you're telling them the truth. They, if you blow smoke up their ass for 3 days and then you sort of say to them, oh, I don't know, blah, 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 it's not going to have the same power as if you've been saying no to them, the power of no, and also the power of, you can do better. Getting people to know that what you say is true is everything. It really is.
Yeah, and that just speaks to confidence and being fearless, and just I guess you have to put in the reps to learn how to be so confident, right? I think at the beginning you're more timid, and then when you've done enough of it, you just you grow that kind of confidence.
I don't think you can make a good record until you've made at least 3 or 4 bad ones.
Right.
It's the truth.
Probably more than that.
Yeah. I dumbed it down. I was thinking more like 20, but I just said 3. But I think we've definitely made bad records for sure.
I think the number of years it takes for people to start getting good at this and successful is about 10 years. Yeah. I think that seems to be the number. That because it's really hard. I feel like it's not just because it's like you have to get good at the technical things, but you also have to be judicious with the artistic aesthetic thing of it as well. So it's like it's a very difficult, but I think all freelancers, it takes, like, I don't know, I was talking to the plumber who came over to fix something, and he said, yeah, it took me about 10 years to become a successful freelance plumber. I was like, oh, yeah. Okay, so it's not just me, Yeah.
It's really true. I just think the more you can relate the music business to other businesses, the better as well. It's fascinating to me. Mine and Rob's dad is a very, very, very bright man. He was a post-atmospheric nuclear ballistic warfare engineer. There you go. So he's an engineer, but yeah, I won't say it again, but it's very, very ridiculous. He's very clever, a rocket scientist in effect. But speaking to him about the music industry is so refreshing because he looks back at you like you are mad. Because if you say to him, oh yeah, well, we did a week on it, but turns out they didn't like it, so they've gone on to another producer. It's like, right, so you're getting paid for that? It's like, no, because blah blah blah. All these things that we all accept as normal in the music industry.
Right.
Say it to someone that's not in the music industry, they look at you like you're mad.
Yeah.
If you say to the plumber some of the ways you've been treated by acts, he will look at you like you are being walked over. It's really fascinating, and I do it weekly is to sort of tell my friends that sell cars something that's happened to me, just get their opinion on it. And just to remember that it's not normal to treat people quite as badly as the music industry does, It's not normal and it's not okay. But we all develop such a skim and, oh, well, it's just how it is. But it's not.
It's a big problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom is always like, so you're going to get paid for that, right? You're going to charge more, you're going to raise your rates.
Yeah.
Like my mom is always like, so you're going to make more money. It's like, it's not so easy.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's not
like
easy.
if I raise my rates, then I'm going out of business,
Yeah, I know it really, really well. We've had to set a rate recently for the new studio, and that's interesting. So while we were building, we had a reduced rate, and now we've just put it up. But it turns out that reduced rate seems to be the good price on the island we're at. So now what we do, and I don't think anyone from the island will probably listen to this, I'll probably get away with it, is we say that we're a certain amount of money, but we just give them the reduced rate. They think they get a great deal, but it's just the rate we've been on for a year. It's most of the time people just they would probably pay your actual price, but they just want to feel like they've got a deal out of it.
Yeah.
Because again, not everywhere's like the music industry. If you're buying a car, you try and get some money off, don't you?
Of course. You just want to feel like you got a little bit,
Yeah, exactly. So if they, it's psychology, man. It's psychology. Every way you turn in this game, it's just a little bit of psychology.
Yes. I'm a psych
I should have
major.
trained in that.
I actually am a psych major. I mean,
you'll do fine.
Only undergrad and in America. So it's like it's a Bachelor of Arts, not even a Bachelor of Sciences. But we did like a little bit of statistics and stuff like that. But
nice. Oh, you'll be well versed. I'll phone you.
I don't know about that, but I do. I think what the psychology stuff that has helped me has been like very intuitive things, and like I think I just have like a very good emotional intelligence, like they call it EQ, right? Emotional intelligence. I think that really helps me with artists in the studio. I think that's why a lot of artists come back to me, is because of the rapport in the studio and me feeling that, feeling out what the situations are, and also being able to coach people singing really well because of that. So I think that's like maybe one of my my stronger points as like a producer.
That's very cool.
But I don't think of anything I studied in college. You know what I mean? I don't think about like, on the DSM, this person might be diagnosed with.
Right. Yeah, sure.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think it's a really great grounding to have in this game, is to have a bit of psychology in there. I did graphic design, so I can just pick out a nice font for your Instagram. That's it. That's all I can offer you.
That's helpful. That's an extra. It's an extra help.
Yeah.
Why not? Well, we're all a little bit of psychologists, and even if we're not trained in it, like just being able to have a good schmooze, a good hang with the artist, and like that's so important, I think.
Oh, so much of the real relationship happens over the coffee or the tea in between the sessions, right?
Absolutely.
Or the walk to the shop. It's funny because if they only ever see you sat at your big look at me desk, it's a very different relationship to if you sort of take them out for dinner and you sit and break bread with them. It's different. It's a different thing. I think it's as important. Your behavior outside of the studio and all the other things you do is really important to the session as well. I think over the years we've done it well and we've done it badly. We've not wined and dined people when we should have done, and then we've you learn. It's but it's just to get a balance on that, I think, is really, really important, because then they see you, like we've talked about with Chad Blake and things. They see you as a human,
right?
Not just like not just that bot that knows how to press number 3 and record you.
Yeah,
is it number 3? Hang on, did I get it right? I did. It is number 3 on Pro Tools. There you go. Yes.
Yeah, the human thing is huge, and also what you were talking about earlier with like getting humans in a room, and in the end of the day, it's also a relationship business, right? Like it's you recommend people that you mentioned the same drummer several times. I should remember the name by now, with an R.
Rupert Brown,
right?
Yeah.
Rupert Brown. So like it's like a relationship business. Like you and Rupert like have done so much work together, and it's like you're not going to look for another drummer if you know Rupert. No. You know Rupert so well, you trust him so much, and like he's done so many records with you, like. Yeah. Of course, you're going to call Rupert. So
yeah, absolutely.
That is it. It's the same thing with what we're doing. I actually want to ask you a couple. I don't know if you remember what you did with the snare drum on that song.
Let me think. So it would have been at the time. It would have been
popped out.
Yeah. So it's not a sample for definite. So it would be a Pi preamp that would be driven pretty hard. So we'd have a little bit of grit on it. There would be top and bottom snare. Mixed in, and then there would be It's actually, do you know what? It's a room. It's most of the attack you hear on it, and the bold bombasticness is that room, that hall that I was talking about. So you've got close mics that are probably being driven pretty damn hard in, and then the room or slash the hall mic is just picking up all the ambience. That's what it would be. But
Nice.
there would be nothing clever on it. It would be because it was only really a getting to know you sort of writing session. So it probably was just a 57 on top,
Yeah.
and probably a 57 on the bottom. And that Dick mic I talked about, there'd be a Reslow in there somewhere. And we've always got a Reslow somewhere. There's normally at the front, yeah. But I can, after this, I've still got the file. I can open it up and tell you exactly.
All right.
We don't throw anything away.
No, for sure.
We've learned that lesson too.
Don't throw any. Hard drive space is the cheapest space.
Yeah. I'll open it up and I find out that it's like AD drums or something. And this is it's just a horrible sample that we've stuck on, but I'm pretty sure it's real.
I mean,
I'm gonna bet the farm. Yeah, I'll bet the farm it's real because it was Rupert. We wouldn't have him in and record him and then stick a sample on right in front of him. No.
Excellent. Well, that song sounds awesome, and all the songs I listen to sound great. So
thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Keep it up, man. Yeah, and
we'll try
up on the Isle of Wight. Amazing. So as I draw the interview towards the close, I always like to ask kind of more general questions. And the first one is, creative energies. We all have days where we're super psyched to get in the studios, but there's days where we're less psyched. Do you do anything, have any routines, habits, anything that kind of helps keep you, buzzed to get into the studio every day?
The thing that makes me the most keen to get into the studio is taking time away from the studio, for sure. Knowing when I need to not be there for a little while. If I've just done 2 weeks straight, or we've just done 2 weeks straight, and the band are finished, there's not a chance I'm going back in for a couple of days. And then I try to do anything that is instant. That sounds crazy because music takes so long to do. I like my natural reaction is to do anything that is instant. So like photography, anything that's one click, or something that is just as far away from music as possible. And then, I mean, this is kind of a humble brag, but we live on an absolutely stunning island. You're never more than 10 minutes from a beach or a cliff, or so getting out and walking. We're lucky where we've just moved to that just down the road there's a river. So 2 minutes over the road you can walk down a river for half an hour and back if you like. So the truth of it is when I don't, to maintain my energy for the studio, the most important thing is getting away from it. That's true. There's not an amount of caffeine in the world that can make me want to go to work.
Yeah. That there are definitely days where you're so excited, and then there are days where it's just like get me away.
Oh man, I do it so quite often. I'll get here and I'll see Rob sat in his car outside, and he's not gone in, and I've done it as well. You just get there and you're like, I just don't know that I can find the energy today. But also I've got a dog, and that hilariously she's not here often, but when she is in here, I find that a weirdly positive energy. Just having something that doesn't care about music, that's just running around, and the bands normally love it, and da-da-da-da-da. Oh, one other thing we do is we quite often have a link to the outside. So we do a band called White Horses, and they like their football a lot. So quite often, if we're in a long session and we're not seeing a lot of daylight and da-da-da, we will have just a laptop open somewhere that has got football on it, or just something that makes you remember that there's a world outside. That gets me going when we really can't, when we can't find energy, just to remember that there's stuff outside of music. It's only music. I should have that on a t-shirt. I say that 4 or 5 times a day, I imagine. It's only music.
It's only music, right? Yeah. It's not open heart surgery, so
no,
don't have to worry about people dying. Amazing. Awesome. So just one last question for you, and before and I'm sure what's about to hit you. But just looking back on your journey, I've kind of rebranded it as advice for people coming up. But looking back on your journey, was there something that you did or didn't do that you'd want to impart on, the listeners who's maybe more at the beginning of their journey to, hey, this was like a good thing that I really that pushed my career, or this was something I did that really held me back? What would be that one piece of advice you'd want to give?
So this is easy for me because we've had this conversation with a young band and a young producer this week. We went through a period of time when we were busy doing remixes, as I mentioned, but we were also really, really close-minded about projects, really close-minded. And we went through a time where we didn't give things even a look. We were like, no, I'm not doing it. Da, 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 da. And we were mixing, and this is a very brief story. We were mixing a band that, let's just say, didn't matter. It wasn't an important job for us. We were just doing it, but we put our all into everything. And we were contacted by a manager. He said, look, have you got time to look at a mix? We're like, oh, I don't know. We're very busy. But he's like, look, I'll send it over. We're like, all right, yes, send it over. And we opened it up in our lunch break from this mix. And we gave it sort of 5 minutes, like, oh, do you know what? I can't be bothered. I'm really in the mode of the other track. Da, 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 da. And we said, like, we phoned him back and said, do you know what? No, we're not going to do it. Da, da, da. And that turned out to be that Video Games by that Lana Del Rey.
Oh,
And all we needed to do was, in the words of the label, make it more psychedelic. So we could have sort of slapped that bloody plate on it or whatever, and we could have got that mix, and that could have been the mix that bumped us right up. But we were too pig-headed to even give it a look. So after that, we've made sure that no matter what it is, if someone sends us something, a demo, or someone says, just take a listen to this, we always do. And we find the time to be open to finding stuff, because it is, you never know what your big chance is. You never know what band that's coming through the door could break, because I've got terrible history with it. A band that I think are brilliant will go nowhere, but that band that I hated and we just, rattled something out, they're the ones that do well. So just
you never know.
You never know. Give everything the time it deserves, even if you think it doesn't. Spend time on things. Just really make sure you're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, I think.
Yeah, that's probably a hard balance to, because I know you kind of mentioned that you're taking all the, you decided at a certain point, like, we're only taking certain projects that we know we can make it better or love. And like, versus like, you never know.
Yeah, well, this is it.
Is there a barometer?
There is. I mean, you get a sense of it, don't you? You know if something is going to be, well, no, I say I would like to think at this point in our career, we can hear a track and go, oh, okay, I can understand that chorus, and I can understand that working, and that will get played on Radio 1, or that's a 6 music. You can see a route for it. You can kind of sit and work it out. So, I mean, there's always a pinch of the academic goes into our decisions, but ultimately we have to know we can get a result out of it. And we don't get it right every time. We've done it again and again where we've gone, no, that's not for us. And then it's wet leg or whatever, it can really kick off. So I don't necessarily listen to my own advice, but I believe it. I buy into the fact that you should take more time to listen to everything. But yeah,
I guess if you take the time to listen to it, then you could kind of be more judicious to see if it is something.
Rather
than just brushing it off. And
but like we're bad. It's not good for your home life, but we will spend as long on a mix for John down the road, who's recorded a song for his nan, as we would, a major label act. We don't differentiate. And I know that sounds like a load of pomp and nonsense, but it's not. We really, really, really care about the output of what we do. And we'd like to think that even songs that aren't necessarily great songs, they will still be mixed as well as they possibly could. And we would give them the time that we think it deserves.
Yeah.
Every time, pretty 98% of the time. Like you say, some days you have a bad day.
Yeah, totally. No, you got to, because you never know.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Not just you never know. You it's a service business, it's a relationship business, and your name matters. And I mean, for me personally, I'm also a people pleaser, and I like to make people feel good. So
yeah, but there's so many. The truth is if you're open and you listen, the great bits of advice, they normally stick with you. You can't help it, because like I mentioned Head earlier, he would say things, and at the time they would just be in passing, and I'd never really sort of considered them. But now, 10, 15 years later, I still remember the stuff he said, because guess what? It's come true 100 times over. He used to, we worried for a period of time that we weren't going to be relevant. It turns out we weren't relevant. And we were chasing down the trends in music. So like, oh, well, this band are doing this and they're happening. And he just turned to us, just like with a cup of tea or like a cigarette. Or he just said, look, don't worry about it. The more now you are, the quicker then you're going to be anyway. And he just said it in passing. But my God, is that true? That's true. Like, so, you sell yourself into a scene and you embed yourself in this wave of something. And as soon as that wave's done, you go with it. Don't worry,
Yeah.
make your sound, make your music your way, and if you are lucky enough that people like it, that's it. But make it for you first. Just listen out for those little gems, because people say them sometimes when they don't even know they are.
That's great.
I've said none in the last hour, but I
No,
promise you that
you've
some
said
people will.
You've said plenty. You know what? And there's so many people on Earth that if something speaks to you, there's a solid chance it'll speak to other people, and that's just even more
Absolutely.
proof of like that you got to do that your thing and find that thing and go for it. You know.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, Jim, that's a perfect note to end on, because I think that's like you've really brought it home there. Yeah, you just got to go for your thing and just do it. You know.
All day.
Yeah, Jim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your wisdom. This was a great schmooze. I really, really had fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. All right, well, you take care.
You too.